People that want to just stretch their legs, you can do that, but immediately they are off here. I'm introducing the next session, please. We're sorry. I apologize on behalf of all of us, and then we just want to make things easier for us. Yeah, photographer, can you do a little bit, be snappy? All right. Dr. Joy, we're going to start the next session. Can we? Okay. Huh? All right. Yeah, I think. The thing is that once we step. Okay. Sirs, I think I'm about to start introducing the next session. My lady, Mrs. Thomas, she's not even hearing. Hello, ma. I'm about to. All right, sirs. We're about to start the next session, please. It's for our own good. We want to just do this and get to have lunch, though it will be a late lunch, but it's better than going to run into the late hours of the day to have lunch. Okay, my panelists are all ready. I'm going to do that now. Once again, good afternoon, and well done to all of us, and please bear with us. We just have to do this way. For the next session, which is our technical session E, and we're going to talk about power transmission and grid stability. And for the moderator, we have Mr. Frank Edoze, Power Component Lead, UK NIEF, I guess. I got it right? All right. You're coming to just have your seat and introduce your panel members. Yeah, give him a round of applause. Yeah, he was so concerned. He said, why don't you let them go out for 5 minutes? I said, well, we'll take 10 and 15 minutes, and that will go into the session. So please, I will hand the mic to him so that he will do justice. And please, immediately we're done with this, we'll just go out for lunch, late lunch. But I assure you it's going to be worthwhile. Thank you. Sir, you can.
Okay. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I know it is going to be difficult to get the room to quieten down a bit, but it would be helpful to get that. If we could have some quiet, a little more quiet, please. Thank you. This is going to be a little difficult coming after what was a long session, but we'll try to make it as engaging as possible. Thankfully, we've got an eminent panel that I will soon call up to deal with the issue of transmission in the Nigerian electricity supply industry. So I will go straight off into inviting the keynote speaker to join me on stage, and that is Engineer Thomas, I believe. What was it? Yes. Engineer Thomas Inugonum. Yes, Inugonum. And that, if you understand Igbo, is a very deep name. Next on the panel, we have Rahila Thomas. I am saving time. There's all the biographies in the brochure that you can go through. Then I'm also inviting Mr. Roland Luindi. And last but not least, we are inviting Engineer Edmond Eje. You couldn't speak about transmission in NESI without Engineer Eje. Okay, as we all know, transmission is the link between generation and distribution. If you don't have transmission, the sector doesn't exist. So it is key. We also know that in the history of the industry till date, generation and distribution were privatized 10 years ago, which is what we're celebrating, marking today. I don't know that it is a celebration, but that transmission has remained firmly in government hands. And there, many of the conversations that we had in the last panel, some of the questions remain. We spoke about meters. If you install meters but the electricity doesn't come through, what value are the meters? And how do you recover from the investment that has gone into meters? If the transmission lines are not robust enough to take power from the generators to the distributors, what is the net worth of the value chain? The conversations around this will be led by the keynote paper that will be presented by Engineer Inugonum, Engineer Thomas, and we shall follow with contributions from the panelists. Engineer Thomas, recognizing what hour of the day we're in, I would push that you deliver your paper in 10 minutes, or as close to 10 minutes as possible. And when you see me looking worriedly at you, you know that it's time to start wrapping up. So, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Thank you, sir. I want to remind us that there is no presentation that is 10 minutes that will give you what is happening in Nigeria. So I must tell you that I'll try my best, but the truth is that it will not be 10 minutes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Inugonum Tom. I'm the General Manager of Port Harcourt region, Transmission Region in Port Harcourt. The theme of the topic, I have put it in two parts. One part is suggesting solutions for transmission challenges over the past 10 years after privatization. And the second part, we look at the grid, how to reduce the grid failures we've been having. So, and there are certain things I may not bother myself because it has been said earlier. But all we know is that privatization was a total failure. And to me, it was a fiasco. Also, the 10 years exposed some of the regulatory policies that were faulty and inefficient. In another dispensation, we have had so much infrastructural development in the generation and transmission, and only a marginal few, if you can, in distribution. There are not enough energy meters anywhere, just like they have said, no infrastructural development. And so, in the conclusion of this particular introduction, we say that those discos that are not performing, their licenses should be withdrawn, and they should give it to those that have deep pockets to bring in infrastructures and recapitalize those that could not perform. It is still not late for some pilot projects or pilot scheme to be done. That's the first thing they would have done, to pick like 2-3 discos and 2 generators and privatize them. Then lessons learned would have helped us to know the challenges and the gains. For the transmission company, the government is holding 100%, but the fact is that we need to have leaders that will support the management in doing the right thing. Therefore, I will encourage the government to appoint the right engineers from within into the board of directors. That will help implement the needs and direct the affairs of transmission company in order to make remarkable progress. To make remarkable progress, to make remarkable progress.
Hello. Somebody with the car number KUJ 288, I think MS, a Honda black, and Abuja number that is blocking one of the senior officers that wants to step out, and they are not. They want the person to go out now and repark his car, please. KUJ 288 MS, a Honda black. Thank you. Sorry.
That is 3 minutes off. So I'm going to, okay, no problem, sir. So you find out that we are looking at transmission challenges. One of the problems we have is that most of our transmission lines are radial lines. And these radial lines should be substituted, or we have to do a double circuit line along with it. What that means is that you are introducing redundancy into the system, which will make your system robust. Now, if we go to, if I continue, the grid, this grid connects the entire country. That's the type of voltage level we have, 330 for the transmission and 132 for the sub-transmission. If I mention a single line now, for instance, from Kaduna to Kano, is a single circuit, still existing. And that is what is taking power to the northwest. Now, the same thing we have from Kaduna to Jos, from Jos to Gombe. And what it means is that if it were to be a double circuit, which we have started looking into, and they're already doing that project, if any fault occurs within the line between Kaduna and Kano, you will find out that 5 states or 6 will be out of power. So there is need to have a robust network by doing double circuit lines. That is the solution to that radial transmission line. Now, another thing is that we have a challenge of the right of way. But before then, these radial lines constitutes almost 50% of grid failures. Why? If you look at, if I can forward, if you look at, I don't know how to increase this now, but there is a particular line. Okay, there's no way it can move. Okay. Now, if you look at this line I mentioned now, from Kaduna to Kano, it's a single line. You can see it. If there is any fault on it, the whole of that state will be in the dark. Now, if you come to Benin to Delta, that is Ugeli, it's another single circuit that whenever it is overloaded, it can trip. And when it trips, the grid becomes disturbed. And if care is not taken, it can go. The same thing we have at the power triangle, which is Benin to Osogbo and Lagos. You can see it's like a triangle. It's still a single circuit. If there is any perturbation on each of those single circuits, the grid can easily fail. So there is need to put it, to dualize it. Let me use the layman's word. So we'll do a double circuit on all of them. It has been planned by the system planning. It's just to execute them. Some of them are being awarded and executed. Now, most of these new transmission lines embarked on are double circuit lines and standard 2 by 150 MVA, 330/132/33. That is actually the standard of our transmission substations. Then another issue is the issues of right of way, which delays the completion of our projects. The aim of these projects are to form closed loops. And if I will show you again from that, my map, I can show you that a place like Jos is being fed from Kaduna. But we have another loop that is closing it from Ugwaji in Enugu State. What it means is that we have a source, double source of supply. In case the one from Kaduna fails, we should be able to get power from Enugu through Ugwaji. So there is need to have a double circuit as a solution for the radial lines. Now, the next slide says inadequate funding as one of the challenges we have for TCN projects. Decentralization and equipping of the stores. Then funding of the research and development plus power system planning. Now, inadequate funding, TCN needs fund to complete the uncompleted substations and transmission line projects. We need to decentralize and equip the stores. In fact, nothing stops us from making sure that each store in each region should at least accommodate spares that can build 3 132 kV substations plus 2 150 by, that's 2 330 kV stations. So that in any case there is problem of maintenance, downtime will be reduced. Because all you need to do is to go to the store and pick what is faulted. So by saying decentralization, we have to make sure that each region has a big store where spares are stored and or stocked. Then the third one there is research and development plus power system planning. That is a very important division, which is fast closing up or closing down. It is the only department that can tell you a viable project after studies that we need. So and so project is so and so part of the country. It has been simulated, and we agree that it will be viable. That department is dying. And there is no parastatal that has a research and development unit that is being funded in this country. It is only through research and development that a country grows. It is only through research and development that a country becomes industrialized. So if you don't know what we are missing, I pray that the government should be able to separate power system planning, research and development, separate it from ISO and TSP, which are the two business units. They should be able to serve the two and stay alone like the market operations. Another challenge we have is vandalization. Our transmission lines are being vandalized, and every day we keep repairing what has been destroyed. I don't know what people want from a tower, a steel structure that is carrying transmission lines from one place to the other. They will go there and remove the tower members and leave it to fall, because with wind pressure, the tower can go down. So TCR management should devise additional means of curbing the issues of vandalization. And one of the ways is to see that the communities and the villages around or along the line where the transmission line traverses are being engaged. And we equally ask the government to assist us with the military men to assist whenever we are patrolling the line. Because today there is no security in Nigeria. People are even afraid to go to the bush. In fact, there was a day I went with them. Unfortunately, I came out alive. And that's why I said unfortunately, because they would have finished us. We met people vandalizing the pipeline. And so immediately they saw us, they shot and started running inside the bush. And I asked myself, if it has happened, what will I tell them that I went inside the bush to do? So there is need for us to ask the government to give us some military personnel to follow us into the bush when we are tracing these lines. Because majority of the faults we have comes from vegetation, transient faults. And this transient fault is not that the tree will touch the line physically. No. The line already that is energized has a magnetic cycle. As the pressure of the voltage increases, the magnetic cycle widens. And so any tree like bamboo that cuts through the magnetic field causes a transient fault, and the line will trip. Then, during construction phase of transmission lines, the military engineer corps shall be integrated in order to finish the construction in time. Because if you don't finish it in time, you spend more money. And that is what has been killing this country, variation. The contractors will tell you variation. Some of them will take the money and will not do anything. TCM Public Affairs is hereby charged to help us create the awareness, but they need to be funded. Still on vandalization, I can show you these are pictures of towers in the Port Harcourt region that was vandalized at Elelewan. The first time it happened, we went there, mopped some funds, and repaired it. After about 2 weeks, they came back again and removed it. You can see the tower is like a woman wearing a skirt. The down part of it is removed. And so they will allow breeze to push the tower down. And once that goes down, it cascades. A lot of fault will occur. And some generators that are not strong, on noticing that, will pull out of synchronism. And if it cascades, we have system failure. These are towers. You can see the first side is showing vandalized tower and people working on it. Now, it happened 3 times by December to January. And each time it happened, we spent like 17 million for one. So at a stage, I was praying to God. I said, Father, I think there is need to kill anybody that we see vandalizing these towers. How can you vandalize something that is giving you power? And I think he heard my prayers. They were able to kill 4. And that place became quiet. So I'm still asking the government to give us military personnel so that they will kill more and we'll have our power. Those who doesn't want power should go. You can see the young man there sitting down. He came to the substation to remove 18 conductors. And what does that mean? When you remove the earthing of a particular equipment, the equipment is floating. It can be roasted anytime. I would have played it so that you can hear what he's talking. was busy talking that was his first time. No thief will ever agree that he has stolen before. They will always tell you that was my first time. Now, if you look at the right-hand side, we have a sky wire that dropped. These are faults. The second one is the tower where a snake is looking for the eggs of bird nests to eat eggs. These are the things that gives us problems. Then plus him that is telling me that is the first time he was stealing. Now you look at this one too. People keep on mining sand near our tower. That's the second picture there. Then erosion, eroding the land. You can see the hopelessness we're facing. So these are the problems we entertain in the transmission industry that causes grid failure. So we talked about TCN decentralizing the region to supervise the discourse technically. Okay. So in decentralizing the region, what I'm trying to do there is that I've seen that we have 36 states plus FCT. Now, presently we have 10 regions, but I will encourage us to have like 13. Now, that 13, 12 should be handling 3 states per region, and FCT should have 1. That's what I'm trying to say there. Then in that 3 regions, I will equally encourage the government to give us 1 distribution to manage the technical issues of those distribution so that there will be nobody to tell you, I will reject load. Transmission should be able to see that the injection stations are well developed. Transmission should be able to see with research and development and power system planning that a comprehensive single line diagram of this region and that of DISCO is known. Because if you ask the DISCOs to provide you with a single line diagram showing the delineation of their boundaries, it's difficult. So transmission could do this. Maybe from the 40% the government is holding, we should be able to man the technical aspects of the DISCOs. Because I'm tired of watching television with touch in my pocket. Every evening, you don't even know when they will take the light. And the people I'm living with will continue telling me you are the GM of a region and you have a generator. So it's disturbing. It's very disturbing. So we should be given that opportunity to manage the technical side of DISCOs. That is those that are performing, not those that are not performing. Then other challenges, I've said this, comprehensive single line diagram, the same map. Now, I take Port Harcourt region, for instance, to show you the low-hanging projects we have. Because as the general manager of that region, I know what projects that will help me deliver power effectively and in a very efficient way, which is part of the what we are asking for. So the 15 kilometers Afam Ikotekbene is not, that's what is holding us. So we need to complete that particular 15 kilometers. By the time we do that, a lot of power that is being generated at Afam will be evacuated because we are going to have stranded power from both fast power and FIPL. They are here, they know what I'm saying. The same thing, completion of the 5 to 10 kilometers Afam One. One has been completed almost 85%, the switchyard and the cable or the conductor to push power there is not available. So they should complete it. And even in Afam, we need additional 2 by 150 MVA to be powered so that we can evacuate enough power. Construction of 74 kilometers. This is something that makes me feel very unhappy with Nigerian contractors. That particular project has been awarded over 15 years, and nobody knows what the contractor did with the money. So when you go there now, you see that Ascom power plant cannot push out power. We have 540 megawatts stranded. Ibon Power, the same thing. And that's the only alternative way to see that Akwa Ibom is supplied with power. The other part of it, which is they get power from Abaitu. Abaitu is an old wolf line, and we need to upgrade it. And TCN is doing that right now. Then, we need to complete the 2x60 MVA, 13233 kV, or Kigwe, Arochukwu, or Hafia, and Mbalano. If you go to Okigwe today, if you're not a strong man, you will cry. A station that was built with over 3-4 billion naira was, in fact, was emptied. They went into the transformer, 60 kVA transformer. People went inside and removed everything inside the transformer. So when you see the transformer standing, you think you have something. No. That's to tell you how pathetic it is. We're in trouble in this country. And if we don't address it by sending the presence of Nigerian military to guard all this infrastructure, we'll be left with nothing. Go and mark it. The remaining ones will be removed. There is a need to eliminate thieves. The moment you start stealing, that is the end. I have said this. Now, to the generators, we need gas. They were here yesterday. They were talking about, the ones that are working. Most of the new generators are like library. You can read if you go there, which is not supposed to be so. Generators are installed outside the town. In fact, they make their generators a town of itself. But go to all these generators they built. Nothing is working. No gas. Well, let me continue since they gave me 15 minutes. This is a Benin region. I just did what I did in Port Harcourt region. No, you just give me some minutes, sir. Okay, sir. Now, the grid failures, way to reduce it. There are a series of issues that we consider in generation. One, inadequate fuel mix. Exploring and developing the coal belt. Deploying the solar wind hybrid in the north. The lake management, massive development of gas turbines in the south, and inadequate funding to develop Mambila. Transmission, on transmission side, we have weak infrastructures. Some of our transmission lines have stayed over 25 years. In fact, some of them were built 1960s, 62, 63, 65. So if you check the time I have just mentioned, they're over 50 years. And in electrical engineering, and electrical equipment can only stay 25 years because of the temperature we're facing here. You can add some more years if the temperature is low. But why we're still having them is that most of them were not impressed with the maximum amount of power that's supposed to flow on them. So we have still an extra of 10 years or 15. That is why we still have some of them active. We also need to ensure that the transformation capacities are redundant. What that means is that you should have at least, like you have in our standard, 2x60 MVA, not one. Because if one goes down, you expect that the other one should help. In order to reduce system failure, we need to develop new transmission lines in the form of backbone. Thank God I have, within myself, before I leave the system, we are doing that as a study to create a super high grid for the entire nation. That super high grid, every other generator should be connected to it. And now I'm encouraging and asking that the government, since it is only gas and oil we have, we should be able to do enough gas power plants. In fact, the government should instruct the oil majors, Shell, Chevron, Mobil, Texaco, ELF, Agip, to do 2,000 megawatts each. They should go to their gas bed and do 2,000 megawatts. That will give us like 14. And there are some stranded generators, even the new ones that are built. Those new ones that are built, they should all be supplied with gas. Recently, they said they are building a generator at Abuja and Kaduna, thermal generator. Yes, I was one of those that did the study. But I remember telling them, that was 2012 or 2013, it will be better to channel the money to develop the Mambila. Mambila will give you 3,000 megawatts. And if Mambila gives you 3,000 megawatts, that will help stabilize the grid in the north. I'm not here to fear, to tell anybody. I'm here to tell you the truth. Stop wasting money to do gas pipeline. It's political. They will vandalize it and depressurize it. So the best thing for you to do, take that money and go and develop Mambila. And develop solar cells with CSP, concentrated or curved spherical mirror solar power plant. That one will help you in the daytime, supply you power. At night, the heat will be used to heat up water to superheated state, and that will turn the steam turbine. So you have power day and night. So leave the gas for those generators in the south that doesn't have enough gas to operate. And that is the truth. Now, managing the lake. If you develop Mambila, you should be able to build artificial lakes. And during off-peak period, pump water into those lakes and let it activate the plant during peak periods. So you see you have more than 3,000 megawatts. We have so many pockets of hydro in the north. We have Kashimbila, Dadinkowa, and so many of them. It will interest you that water comes into Nigeria 3 months from Futajala Mountain. And so, if it takes 3 months, that is why we are unable to operate our generators fully because of the dry season and the wet season. So we should be able to look at how to manage this lake by doing artificial lake. I've talked about redundancy of lines, and we only have 2 system failures this year, and I pray we don't have more. Deployment of the right compensation equipment. This is another important area that we need to. And equipment auditing, reconductoring of T-lines that are obsolete. Then grid expansion is important. Another thing is grid discipline. Our operating engineers should be trained on the ethics of operating the system. Also, operational maintenance staff should be encouraged and trained in order to maintain and operate these transmission facilities to optimum electricity delivery. Another problem why we have grid failure is when you transfer staff that are very important in a particular station, you move into another place. Meanwhile, those that do not do anything, you promote them. So the young man or woman will say, okay, since they don't appreciate me, I will not do anything again. So I encourage our principals to look inwards. Before you do that, consult the regional transmission manager and ask him, Our SCADA should be developed regionally. Transmission needs to have a good protection interface with distribution and meet regularly with them to analyze the faults and protection coordination of the relays in their region. Investing on supergrid is very important. The supergrid will enable us to supply power to our neighboring countries, our friends, and bring in revenue. There is need to build workshops and laboratory. Like I've explained before, there is no meaningful development without research and development, without laboratory and workshops. That's where you practicalize what you have researched. Inadequate fuel mix, this one I have talked about it. These are areas that the gas turbine development, we have so many of them, I've spoken about this. Inadequate fund. Then reserve margin. Reserve margin, the grid code says that every generator should have 10% of whatever it is, the capacity they are generating. So the NEC should be able to ask questions to the generators. Are you doing that? Secondly, do you have ancillary service provision? Do you have a black start? Are your governors on free mode operation? Because the governor should be on free mode, not fixed. That free mode is what shows you how the system responds to the load demand. And if it is not there, if it is fixed, any slightest perturbation, all the generators will start moving out, pulling out of synchronism, and that gives you grid failure. Now on distribution, if they will allow, if they are allowed to stay alone, should develop more injection substations for effective operation and protection of 33 kV feeders. They should develop further their network and ensure active boundaries with 33 kV length within 20 kilometers. Distribution should have good delineation network and single line drawing. Training of distribution staff is very key. Then, another important area is power quality. There are areas you think that there is power, but it cannot even carry refrigerators, showing that the power quality is very, very low. So they should be able to improve by going through the steel companies and telling them to install harmonic filters at their various interface. Because those without filters generate harmonics, which comes in back, flows back to transmission through the neutral link. And that is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause for Tom, who very gently resisted all the pressure, but but you can tell from the richness of his material that it was well worth it. Thanks, Tom. Yeah. Right, we sit at the cusp of change in the power sector. So a lot of what Tom has taken us through is true for the current grid structure. A lot still remains valid in the new era of the electricity sector, where states are now allowed to generate, transmit, and distribute power within their local areas. So there'll be a fair bit of adaptation that needs to be done. And taking the lessons from the past 10 years and looking into the future, the time is right that we begin to examine some of those things that would need to change so that we avoid the kind of mistakes and missteps that were made in the past. And that would be my interest in orchestrating the conversation over the next 20 or so minutes when my co-panelists will offer their views, both on what Engineer Tom has taken us through, but also their own perspectives in the power sector. So let me turn to you, Roland, building on what Engineer Tom has said, to ask how you see changes, developments in the transmission space that will bring robustness into a NESI that is driven by lots of states running their own electricity business with their own electricity markets. Tom. Sorry, Roland.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Yes, I'll just run through a few areas that I believe can be implemented very quickly and would make a difference in the performance of the grid as a whole. Yeah. Yes, the first one is interconnection. As we know, the larger the grid is, the more resilient it is. That's just how the engineering of it works. Yes, a large grid is less sensitive to a small or a single event, such as loss of a chunk of load or loss of a generator. And the larger the grid is, the better. Yeah, obviously we can wait, and our grid should grow over time. It hasn't grown much over the last 10 years, but eventually to grow. So as it grows, we shall get resilient coming in with this. Yeah, but we can shortcut this process. And we will probably shortcut this process by basically interconnecting with our neighbors under the West African power pool. I'm aware TCN is basically leading the West African power pool. They're providing good leadership there. There are arrangements to interconnect the West African power pool. But sometimes I have a feeling that there's a little bit of reservation. But one of the benefits that we would see once we connect the whole grid in West Africa is actually that it should become more resilient. And I think this is something that we can do in the next 1 year. I believe there is actually a plan at TCN to implement this in the next 1 year. And the prayer is that let us not delay this any further. Thank you. The next aspect is loss management, the transmission loss. If we look at the losses in the grid, currently around 7.5%, 7.25%. This is about the average load of a disco. So actually on the grid, we've got another disco called the loss disco. Disco number 12 is losses. That's how much power we lose. Obviously, to some degree, technical losses are inevitable. I'm not sure what the correct level for our grid is, but the feeling clearly is that if we start going above 7%, and sometimes we hit 9%, is that we are on the wrong side of the losses. This could indicate a few things. It could indicate that our network is getting, is beginning to lack capacity. It could also indicate that we're not maintaining it properly. It could also indicate that we're not we are not operating it properly. And these responsibilities is the ISO splits from the rest of the TSP. These responsibilities for losses will become probably a little bit more complicated. Yeah, but there's also another aspect which is not often mentioned. When you lose power as losses, you lose the power, but you also, those losses are destructive in your system because they manifest as heat. They heat and edge the equipment. They cause more problems. So the loss is actually a double blow. You lose revenue and you get damage to your equipment. So what I'm urging here is that TCN or TCN successors should, I know that losses are being macro-managed, but I think we need to move very quickly towards micromanaging. Probably, basically to account for losses in every area, every line, every hour. Otherwise, one day we shall just wake up and find that disco number 12 is taking too much power. The last one is called basically incentive regulation. I hope NEC is present in the room. One aspect that we see in the grid is that during peak hours, there's under-frequency. During off-peak hours, late morning, there is over-frequency. And this is almost every day for the last 5 years. Yeah, generators don't want to be ramped down during off-peak and ramped up during peak hours. But a small incentive to NEC, such as a time of use tariff, pay the generators a little bit more when they run during peak hours and less at night, and then they will tend to operate in line with, in a load following mode. This will reduce the spinning reserve requirement on the grid and other ancillary services. Yeah, so I think these three areas could really have a lot of impact on the grid in the next 1 year. Thank you, Frank.
Okay. Thank you, Roland. I see a theme strand emerging from the keynote address from Tom to your points about macro managing rather than micromanaging. I still have my head in the space of state electricity markets, and I wonder how all of these will play, recognizing that in the TCN network of today, there is in effect one national operation center in Osogbo with a number of regional settings that lend support to what comes out of Osogbo. So I'd like to turn to Edmond to ask him, with a view to all of the things that you know that should not be in the current organization of the network. What are the key things you would like to see change, and soon, on the network, such that the states that take the first step towards their own markets have a fair chance of making a success of it?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Tom, for your presentation. Yes, the new act has actually hyped the state or sub-national ownership of what I call electricity market. Now, it's not a new thing, only that just the reviewed act hyped it and brought it to the fore. Otherwise, the Lagos state government tried it, generating 8 megawatt and all that, and then somehow it bred some champions. You can understand. It bred some champions quite all right, and then they fizzled out. Now, the understanding of state ownership of electricity has various dimensions, and people perceive it as such. One is that given the economy we operate today, where the three major macroeconomic indices give us wrong signals, bad signals, somehow it is quite difficult for an average state in Nigeria to start up to say, I am going to establish a generating station, I am going to establish transmission line, and of course, I'm going to run distribution line. Good thing in your presentation the other day, a lot of clarifications were also made. And that is to say, some states might want to key in the area of developing industrial cluster. Download weather 330, 132 to power that particular area. And by so doing, they become kind of a trader or eligible customer. And then that cluster delineation and reticulation would be able to see them operate as a distribution company, quite different from the existing distribution companies. And by so doing, they will rake in a lot of revenue because they will now be attracting investors. Sometimes I find it difficult to talk about foreign investors. We have investors here in Nigeria. All they require is security. Some of them have their money. All they require is security to be able to predict tomorrow and then invest where their hearts are. Now, the takeoff of subnational electricity demands that there should be a reshaping of the federally owned NCC, National Control Center, vis-a-vis ISO, activities of the system operations, and then the activities of the market operations. Now the grid remains the same. We're not going to relocate 330 transmission lines. We're not going to relocate 132 transmission lines. What it means is that these transmission lines will overlap. Some of them terminate in one state, take off, terminate in another state. Now, what the system operations, probably through the market operator as usual, is to make sure that there is adequate metering of these overlapping grid lines, because 33 kV lines and below will now be subject to the state-owned electricity. Now, the discos are there. Most of them are going to buy energy from the grid. The state-owned industrial cluster, so to say, if a state chooses so, will also be taking energy from the grid. Now, to be able to audit such energy monthly and, of course, prepare settlement statements, which will indicate amount of energy taken from each generator, amount of energy consumed by already existing distribution company and the industrial clusters. These nodes must be adequately metered. Now, after metering them, what it means is that these new clusters would now be seen as another level of market participants for which they will also get registered because they will be receiving services of the system operations. The grid remains under the National Control Center. The grid is what connects all parts of Nigeria. It's a security item. In India, what it does is that there's a super highway whereby after your own state consumption, because you're generating, you have your own network. After whatever remains after your consumption enters into the super grid and go to a different location that will buy the energy. But in Nigeria, you see spread of our generation. Doctor was talking about Mambila. If Mambila is developed, now you wouldn't be seeing low voltage you read in probably in Bauchi, the ones you read in Mole, the ones you read in Damatru and all that. Those energies or the lines coming from there will balance the grid. And balancing the grid, the system has been ringed before it is radial. Radial means if you have a generator here, then line gets off. Now, if any part of the country gets cut off, it's really difficult to backfeed. But today, we are almost complete in the ringing from Port Harcourt to Uguaji, Jos, Makurdi, Kaduna, and then from Kaduna also Bauchi, and then you head towards Maiduguri. And what we are now saying, instead of having single line going to Damatru and Maiduguri, we should make it double. And that's part of what we call N-1 in the line system. Now, how would this stabilization also help the states? The states will be rest assured that, yes, the energy I am taking, even if I'm not generating, I am getting energy from the grid. And by their cluster development, consumption is expanded. Today, it's very difficult to agree that industries take only 30% of total generation in Nigeria, while domestic use is about 70%. That's the opposite in developed countries where we have industrialized countries. Now, the state also should be able to, where it's possible, increase their generation profile the way they can, solar, and where the government can also come in to reduce importation duties on some of this solar energy to be able to give some ease to the national grid, and then people can sit with a standalone generation within their side in the form of a solar system. Now, the states actually would become traders, as the case may be. I remember when Shell was being commissioned in 2008, 2009, they offered that any state that wants to generate, they have an array of column where they can cite a generator of your unit, of your choice. If it is 30 megawatt, if it's 300 megawatt, they will put it there and then ask you to, it will be metered on their behalf. And then they say, state A, this is your generator. At the end of the day, what you will get is a settlement statement, and you don't bother yourself. If the energy generator comes into your state and you want to use it as a political favor to your state, so be it. But it will be metered. Now, if you can't use all of them, the part of it that is sold in the pool will be paid to you, you know. So, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, the state ownership of electricity market as it is in an innovation. And then it will go a long way, giving the state that responsibility that my people are not getting light. I can do something. I can attract investors to also, as we're talking, 2 states have also earmarked, spaces for industrialization, and then they're working on how, not just to go and buy a generator which they cannot maintain because the gas is not there. The insecurity of a gas pipeline is also another problem. But for them, once 330 crosses that state, now they can tee off all the capital investment they can do is on 330 substation, and that becomes their own. They become automatic traders. Virgin, far from the ones existing, so that the clash between the new state-owned market is quite different from the ones the existing discos have, because that has been the confusion. How are we going to man them? How are we going to do this? Now, extrapolating it from there, now we talk about the grid stability. Grid can only be stable when money comes into this market. The money is not coming into the market. The federal government has been injecting money, but without taking adequate, consideration of the money they are spending. A lot of money you are making intervention is well welcomed. It's a good thing to make intervention, but it is also well to say if I make an intervention, the output must justify the purpose of making that intervention. But the federal government has not been doing this. All they know is injecting, you know. So the so-called donor agencies come here and make mess of us, and they say they have their addition to give to us. At the end of the day, it's an element of neo-colonization that they're giving us because of extended loans, so many things against us. Now the federal government as well is busy duplicating roles in the electricity market, which ought not to be. What is the role of Energy Commission of Nigeria? What do they contribute to the market we are talking about?
Okay,
Energy
shall we make that the subject of the next conversation?
Yeah.
One thing about Edmond is he never fails you with his passion. You get carried away with that. You know where the man's heart is. Yeah, round of applause for him. Yeah. We got some key things from the conversation, and I do see the thread. So in Tom's paper, he was talking about single circuits that are radially organized, and the need to ring them. You have in a way emphasized the need for that in his contribution. Also in Tom's contribution, what we picked was the need to think about a supergrid that rings the nation, yeah? Probably, most likely, sitting above the current 330. Now, all of these, to strengthen the grid, make them rings rather than radial, to build a supergrid, all of these need money. Edmond, you say there is money locally. Yes, but I'm not sure we can find local money to build a supergrid, right? I'm also not sure we can find the patient capital that is required to build some of these infrastructure. Therefore, now I turn to you, Rahela. What do we need to do? What does the sector need to do to attract investment into critical aspects of the power sector, and in particular, the transmission space, looking at all of the gaps that we have that are currently creating challenges?
Thank you, Frank. So, I guess, looking at it, that the critical nature of robust transmission infrastructure cannot be overstated. Overstated in the sense that you need that for an overall functional grid system. Why is that? Because one, it engenders, the reliability of the system. I think AJ mentioned earlier about a lot of industries that are off-grid. I think you said only 30% consumption from the grid. It's much lower than that in an analysis I did in 2020. When you look at the energy consumed from the grid by industries, it's only 9%, it's about 9%. When you compare that to other countries like Egypt, Morocco, they're in their 30s. So you have 25% of that as commercial, and then the remaining is residential, where really is where the inefficiencies lie and the high losses stay. So, the more robust the network is, you have a migration of industries coming on the grid, who are the people that have the money to actually pay. Now, energy access, obviously, it engenders energy access. The World Bank recently said that 85 million of Nigeria is not on the grid. That is a big number. If there is a robust transmission network and all the things we talked about here is addressed, that happens. And of course, it creates a higher integration of utility scale renewable energy, because when you optimize the system with the required investment, then it's able to take on the intermittency of renewable energy. And today, in today's world where we are running towards energy transition, having that robust network will have us have a less carbon intensive power market, because a lot of the energy today, the energy needs are met by self-generation, using fossil fuel PMS. If the grid is robust, people migrate, then there'll be more people, less people using self-generation. Now, how do you attract that private capital? Because today you only have a federal government budget and the development world funding it, and that's not how it should be. You should be able to bring in private capital, which is what the entire value chain needs. We already have the fundamental building blocks. So for example, you have the transmission use of system charge. That is so important because it gives you a clear sight as to how you can recover your cost of capital or investment that you make. So that already we have. The other thing is the grid code, which establishes the technical standards, the operating and safety margins required, and planning process. All these are prerequisites for private sector participation. And lastly is the development of a legal and regulatory framework, which needs to be strengthened to enable the private sector to come in. Now that has happened with the recent Electricity Act that was passed, because in the Electricity Act, it allows third party to invest without necessarily having a transmission license. It allows, independent transmission network operators to also come in. So we already have all that. We just need to implement. We need to bring it to bear. Now, one of the things that needs to happen is the creation of the ISO. The Electricity Act talks about that, and in the recent market report that NEC published, it actually made recommendations that the market has been fully, or it's reached a level of competition that you can allow for, that would allow for the ISO to be established. And why is this ISO important? Because it guarantees non-discriminatory, efficient operation of system operation and market administration. It also will be able to hold the ISO accountable, because there are statutory provisions that requires the ISO to be able to be accountable on how it runs the operations of the grid. We talked a lot about the challenges around ancillary services. The ISO can push for private funding. They can actually go and look for private funding to access all these ancillary services, such as spinning reserves, reactive power, black starts. All that is required for an optimized grid. And more importantly, when the ISO, if you create the ISO, that helps us to move towards a bilateral wholesale electricity market. That is so important, because what that does is that it creates the environment to have the willing buyer, willing seller arrangements, where people can now determine what they need and in the position to be able to pay for that. So the issue of enforcing contracts comes to light. So the ISO for me is one of the fundamental things that needs to start, because if you look at downstream distribution, to create more competition, you can unbundle it. You unbundle the network from services, supply. And what does that do? More business happens, private investors come in to provide the service to customers. You have someone managing the network and you have someone providing service. The same thing is required in transmission. You have to unbundle it. The network, TSP, the transmission service provider, is responsible for that. And then you have the system operations, the market operations under one umbrella as an ISO. That will engender more efficiency in the system. It'll be transparent, which is very, very important. So that's one. The other thing that's required is there needs to be determination as to what is the gap by voltage level. I know that there's a lot of planning that goes on in TCN. There's a lot of planning, there's a lot of documentation, strategy, and all that. But I think now, where you have an Electricity Act that has opened up that market to private capital, there needs to be clear as to where they can invest and how they can play. So, for example, we're talking about supergrid. You need to determine what different voltage levels that private sector can come and play. We have today at transmission 330 and 132. Do we want to go up to 500 and 700? Because with that, you can have cross-border, cross-national trade and regional trade. Then when you come down to the state level, we're talking about subnationals now being responsible in designing their markets. They may want to go for 66 kV. because at 66 kV is cheaper, is easy. I mean, you can easily step it up to a higher voltage, and you can step it down to 33. Perhaps that is what, so there needs to be a clear definition of the different voltages and establishing what the transmission gap is at those voltages and making it transparent. Let it be out there. Let people understand where the need is, how should they participate. And that takes me to my last point about the model required to participate. Now, is it a concession? Do we want to concession some of these lines? Do we want to have it in the different public-private partnership models around build, operate, and you transfer, or you want to only build, operate it, and transfer it, or you just want to be an investor? You just want to invest in it, and I want to see my money paid back. I mean, there are different models, but again, after mapping out what the transmission gap is along voltage lines, there needs to be clarity as to how a private sector or private investor can come. What is the modality? How do they go about it? The issue of not having enough data out there or information that guides investors is a problem. I should be able to go on the ISO website, or I mean, now we have TC, and that's why the ISO is important. All this sort of information should be out there. So if I'm sitting in Norway and I'm an investor, and someone comes with me and say to me that, oh, you know what, I want you to come and invest in a 132 line of 400 kilometers. What does that entail? How do I do it? So I think that those are the kind of things private sector wants to see. Clarity of purpose. Why are you even building certain lines? For some investors, if you're building a line because you want to integrate renewables, they're happy to go there, because for them, they can access climate finance and get into this whole carbon credits and how all that works in that ecosystem. So information is key, clarity on what you want to do at the transmission level, but more importantly is to have that ISO established so that that independence is created in the network.
Thank you very much. If I may add to that, you give a very good coverage to that. That is indeed well deserved. Please, let's clap like we have some life. Thank you. Right. Thanks. One additional dimension I'd like to add.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Thank you very much. Indeed, Rahela is an engineer. She mentions, some silent areas that I didn't expect that she should. But thank you for that. The grid, the super grid we are talking about, we are on 330 kilovolts now, maximum of twin conductor for a phase. But the idea of a super grid is that you have to go to another voltage level. We proposed 760 at a time, 500. But the problem with this is that you have to know how many people, how many countries are using that same voltage because of spares. If you take a voltage that is only you that is using, you will find it difficult because nobody will produce your spares for you. So we still believe in exploring the 330, which we are working on, which we are using, by using more conductor bundles. I know that TCN, most of the jobs we are doing now, most of the contracts that we are awarded are based on double circuit quad conductors. So you find out that will carry enough power to the load centers. Now, the super grid will enhance our revenue generation by earning foreign earnings when we export the power. Like I did mention, because there was no time for me to go in depth what I really had in mind, this super grid will cut across this, just ringing the whole country. The existing grid will be connected to it. Then you come to the south-south where you have gas and develop power plants. Like I did say that oil majors should develop a minimum of 2,000 megawatts per oil company. The government should instruct them to do it, because in other countries they do up to 5,000, 4,000 megawatts. All we need to do is to gather the gas to a station, a flow station, and treat it, dry it, then put a power plant there. We should be able to get all this power that we need. Once the super grid is ready and you push in this power to the super grid, you can export power and get your money. Now, coming to the state electricity that the new act said something about, that each state can do generation, transmission, and distribution. It's quite laudable, good, but I was expecting that they would have go straight to zones first, since we have 6 zones. They would have started with that, so that there will be a sub-zonal ISO, a sub-zonal control center that will be answerable to the national control center. Now, like engineer just said, there's no way we can detach our grid from the state on. We will only show them where to connect. It will make our system more sensitive. It will help us to go islanding. So most times when the system is perturbed, you don't expect a total failure. All you need to do is to disconnect the faulty area from those healthy areas. And that can only be achieved through islanding process. Now, if you look at it, if you come to the south-south, you have Sapele Power Station. There you have an NIPP station. You have INES there. You have Ugeli Power Plant. You have Ihobo. At least I've counted up to 4. You go to the north, northwest, we can have, even in north central here, we have Zungeru, we have Kainji, we have Gurara, we have Shiroro. Because for you to operate a system, you must have a generator that will give you the slack bus. And the slack bus is chosen from the largest capacity machine that can produce the reactive power. So I have looked at it in the northeast. We have Dadinkowa, we have Kashimbila, we have this Mambila I'm talking about. We can develop them. These things can only go in automatically when there is a system disturbance. Everyone goes to its own island and share it in percentage, the slack buses.
Okay, you're clawing back your time.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. And where you got to, actually, is what I was expecting in a way as TCN's response to the reality of state markets, which is to go zonal. Right? That would be the way to go. One reality, back to the treatment of Rahila of the subject, is the external finance people do not, pardon me, but I'll say it as raw as it is, they do not want to touch TCN with a 10 pole, right? So they don't want to do anything with the 330 kV if TCN is involved. However, when you have a public-private partnership that allows them to see line of sight to how their money is spent and how the revenue comes back, they are interested, right? Therefore, that's what pushes this notion of a super grid that rings the nation around, that is operated by consortium of, private party partners, right? And provide the service, and they get their toll. The other point also to take into account, we had this incident with Niger, right? What if your line went to Niamey and then came back to Sokoto? I shouldn't have said that. Right, but you get the sense I'm making. National security is a key consideration in all of this, given the dynamism of our worlds. Ladies and gentlemen, you've listened to us for a while, and I'm sure there are a few questions in the audience.
May I talk on this investment? Just a minute. A minute on the investment.
1 minute starting now.
Yes. Okay. I like a reality show, and that is what is practicable. And you see, we've had so many people coming to TCN to talk about, we want to invest in transmission line, but when you face them with the reality, they will run away. What are the realities? the government is using Transmission Company of Nigeria as a middle, or just as an intervention organization. Transmission Company of Nigeria does not earn cost-reflective tariff. So by the time you begin to say somebody is coming to invest, and then he will wait at the end of the month to see what the distribution companies have paid. From there, he paid. Some Chinese came, I did the calculation for them. How are you going to amortize your investment? If you are coming to me, I will tell you that look at what the collection is for the month, and appropriately, this is what you earn, percentage earn, you earn. Are you going to have it that way? So the appropriate thing is whoever is coming, just the usual way of giving government loan, or say give TCN loan through the federal government. But for somebody to come say, I am going to invest in Transmission Company of Nigeria and amortize my distance through revenue, it is not practicable 20 years coming.
Okay, Engineer Eja, I'm a skeptical believer of your version of the facts, because Engineer Eja is the market operator. Engineer Eja sits inside TCN, right? If you're standing on the outside, where is the objective transparency in the figures that you are quoting when you say TCN is not earning cost-reflective tariff? You understand where the challenge is? Hence the need for the independent system operator to have been created already yesterday, that gives market operations independence in the value chain. Right, I'll turn to the audience now. Any comments or questions? There's one, there's two, there's three, there's four. So I will start. Yes.
Good evening, everybody. I wanted to, a couple of questions, and if you permit me, around the topic. One is the concept of spinning reserves, and why has it been such a difficult initiative to implement? I know that previously there's been attempts to procure spinning reserves, and it's curious to know either from the MO or likely the MO why that's hasn't happened. In terms of the way the grid is interconnected, in certain markets the interconnection is to generators as a whole, like a GENCO, right? But in Nigeria, it appears as if the interconnection is to individual generators, turbines or units. And in certain scenarios where we're trying to do some integration of two technologies, it appears as if that integration with individual units was a bit of a constraint to be able to create the synergy. So I'm curious to know why in Nigeria that is the system versus, say, in France. Now, in terms of bringing private sector investments into...
So we don't run the risk that we forget your questions. You've asked two, so let's hold that.
Okay.
Could I ask you to introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry. All right. I was on the panel earlier today, so I guess I skipped my mind. My name is Irabo. I'm a director in KPMG and head of energy infrastructure for West Africa.
Thanks, Irabo. Right, and your questions...
One was on spinning reserves.
Yes, both questions will go to Engineer Eja as MO.
I think Dr. Tom can take the second piece.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Was here in front. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, all. Oladeji is my name, from the Regulations Department of TCN. And my question will cut across the panelists, and it dwells on the creation of ISO. And from Raila's submission that the time is now to create an independent system operations. I just want to bring us back memory lane to the ruling documents guiding the operation of the electricity market. From yesterday's presentation, it was established that the privatization of the electricity market, in quote, is probably a mistake. And from Dr. Tom's opening speech, he mentioned it expressly too, that the privatization was an error. And on this premise, I want to come and say the market rule has a provision for the involvement of an independent ISO. Appendix 1, stating all the condition precedents there that will warrant an ISO to be created. My question now is, from your point of argument, can we really say at this time, looking at the way discussions have evolved early this morning, illiquidity and the stuff, and Dr. AJ equally said there will be opportunity to source for fund to procure ancillary services. And we have been talking about fund and investment since the beginning of this conference. I want us to holistically look at it and say, if actually the time is now for the next stage of the market, which is the medium time, to evolve, I want a response concerning this.
Thank you very much for your question. I would add, if I would put a closing phrase to your question, it would be because I do not believe it is time yet. However, Rahila, you will take that question. We have two from, yeah, okay. Oh, there are so many more hands now. So I'll go to the guy in white. No, with the white cap, or, yeah.
Thank you, the moderator, and thank you to the panelists. Quite insightful contributions from all the panelists. I would like to, my name is Kabiru Adamu. I'm the General Manager in charge of System Planning and Development, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN. The keynote presenter, Dr. Tom, my senior colleague, has highlighted some of the key issues that the transmission system is going through, and with key emphasis on the fact that the grid is mostly radial. I would like to make a comment in that regard, because when we are talking of radiality in terms of transmission network, we are referring to segments of the transmission network that is connected to the rest of the grid only through a single point. That is a radial segment of the network. And if we are to look at the map presented by the presenter, you could see that we have quite a few of those kind of lines that we can clearly call radials. A significant part of the grid, in a way, is mostly ringed. And when you are talking of N-1 supply reliability on the grid, you are talking about those lines that have only one source of connection to the rest of the grid. So whenever there is an an interruption on that single point, they completely lost supply. So you can achieve N-1 in multiple ways, not necessarily only by going through doubling the circuits. As long as you be able to create alternative connection points to that radial transmission segment, it's no longer a radial line. So most of the transmission lines highlighted as being radial on the system are not quite radial because they have ring connection that serves as alternative connection to those segments of the network to the rest of the system. So I want to just clarify that the statement that the grid is mostly radial may not be absolutely correct, because significant parts of the 330 kV network of TCN has more than a single connection to the rest of the grid. The critical ones that we have as of today are not more than 3 that have single connection to the rest of the grid. And TCN has actually seen them, have plans to ensuring that they have additional connection to the rest of the grid, and works are on the ways to achieving that. So a lot of work is being done. We all believe that the grid needs to be more resilient, and hands are on deck to be able to achieve that. For the priority ones, I can assure you that TCN already has gotten funds to implement those projects to ensure that that radiality has been addressed. The second point I want to comment on, Mr. Moderator, if you can allow me, is the concept of the supergrid, which is also clearly emphasized in the course of this discourse. Talking about supergrid, we're talking about the capacity of the grid to deliver large quantity of power to high load centers. TCN has conducted an analysis, like the doctor has mentioned, to look at the options of upgrading or creating supergrid segments of the grid. And the solution has, or the studies have considered different voltage levels, just like Doctor has mentioned. We have considered higher voltage of the 700 kV. We've considered 500 kV. And we also considered high capacity 330 kV networks. From the economic analysis of those studies, it became evidently clear that TCN needs to continue its supergrid projects with a 330 kV voltage, not going higher for now. The solution to be adopted in that regard is to take more bundles of conductors per phase, like Dr. Tom has said, and that the study also showed clearly that there is a level of power generation and transmission that is required before we venture into implementing that supergrid. So we have some solution on the ground for the supergrid, but it is tied to volume of power within the system before that project will become efficient. So TCN is not mindful of that, and we are watching the trend. At appropriate time, supergrid will be deployed to address the need for very high volumes of power transfer from the points of generation to the various points of demand.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
My senior colleague, Dr. Eja, has talked about the investment, so I'll keep it at that.
Okay.
Just my little contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a very, very useful intervention there. We have, yes, in another, the blue, yeah.
Good evening. I am Barnabas Govamin, Vice President, Power and Clean Energy, NIEEE. My question goes to the key presenter. You spoke about compensation equipment, which is key in power transmission, considering especially, grid failure. So I don't know, what is TCN doing about ensuring that you really have workable compensation equipment? That's number one. Number two, you spoke about killing those stealing your equipment, which I think globally now, that's not what we want to hear. But thank God you spoke about SCADA. Globally, we have SCADA, we are in the digital world. So what is TCN doing to ensure that you use your SCADA properly in safeguarding your equipment? Have you considered also maybe perhaps, you say you spend 17 million maybe in just one tower. Have you considered using maybe helicopters and others to be able to guard your equipment? Thank you.
Thank you. So one more question, and then we'll get the answers and see where we are with time. No, it's the, yes, in the jacket.
Yeah, thank you. Moderator, thank you very much. I need to speak because this affects me practically when we talk about the grid collapse. My name is Engineer Chido. I'm the chairman of Ibom Power Plant. We are surrounded by decayed infrastructure in evacuating the power we generate. Even when we are that small, we are not able to evacuate about 150 megawatts. The first phase is 191 megawatts. And one of the plants are down, and when we call on any investor to bring in investment, they are looking at the evacuation problems that we do have. So for over 6 years, we have been on this. Calabar, Dr. Thomas did mention that. Calabar to line, which I learned now, thank God, the contractor has gone to site. And then Ituaba, affect us, the reconductoring, just to reconductor. And I know how many times I've been in front of the former ministers of energy and permanent secretary powers and all of that. And nothing has been done for over 6 years now. So thank God they've said they'll finish Calabar 2, they will go to that. And that brings me to the issues of contractors in the power sector. Incessant contracting by NDDC, we have a lot within Akwa Ibom State. That power projects are not completed over the years. Like you mentioned, one of them for 15 years, involving NDPHC, then TCN, those three players we can count up to 6, 7 contractors or projects that have not been done. So what are we doing, to be able to manage these contractors and complete the power infrastructure on time? Because why I'm saying the power, the grid affects me because once it goes down, I'm told to ram down the turbines. And when you ram down the turbines, you need to use Blackstar to bring it up again and all of that. So this is a very serious problem, and investors are not. One of it, the Ikorobasi line. Second phase, we've had license for over 6 years to be able to develop the second phase. But the investors, when they come, there are no evacuation route, to complete. That has been started over the years, for over 15 years, which has been done, and it's not. So I believe, seeing that the TCN man is here, this should be taken seriously to help us because we are really, really complaining. And on the grid collapse, we are engineers, and we're just looking at, can this not be simulated? Looking at the amount of power on the south, and then looking at what to be developed in the north, to be able to balance the equation. And then you can sit at Oshobo, and then you look at your control room or control screen, and then look at when preempting what is going to happen, depending on where the powers are. And then I am completely in consonance with the super line, super towers. When you develop, like Thompson said, develop power plant in the south because we have gas. And then we had talked about when we discussed the gas issues, let's declare an emergency on gas provision so that we can pump in power into the super grid, and then we can make money out of it as a country. Lastly from me, the Siemens project. Where are we? Where are we? I learned federal government has a federal government power company. So where are we? I've not seen any presentation from them. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I let you go, so I could feel the pain in you, so I allow that to come out. The question on the Siemens project, I am not aware that there's competence in this panel to address that, so I will pack that. Well, okay. Yeah, we can also vent on it, but that's not, it doesn't help. Tom, are you going to take his issue? No, so, yeah, you have other questions. I'm just saying this last point yeah, you've got that, right? The other thing I would say to you,
I think
let's address the answers to questions that have been, if we still have time, then we'll come for the second round. What I would say to you is, in your position, I'll be doing like this, waiting for any of the states around me to pass their electricity law. Imagine signing PPAs with geometric power, PPA with Cross River, whoever it is in Cross River that is going to distribute power in that place that has less than 30% of their need being met, right? And then being faced with the problem of finding the conductors to get the power there, right? Then you can say to Engineer Eje, yes, I have my answer. Okay, so let's go to the answer. So you've got the first question on spinning reserves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I got the question on spinning reserve. Why not spinning reserve? It is technically required that a grid network should have a spinning reserve. Technically, we have studied our own network. Today, people try to argue that we don't have enough generation, and that's why there's no power in the country. It is absolute zero. It's not true. We have 27 generators in the country, and we can specifically say they can generate 16,000 megawatts. But why not the 16,000 megawatts? The transmission grid can carry 8,100 megawatts. Why can't it carry that 8,100 megawatts out of the 16,000 generation capacity available in the country? Now, if we have this abundant capacity of generators, it's really difficult. I've argued with some people whether we, at this time, require spinning reserve when we have abundant generators in the country. When in 2017, people were pushing spinning reserve, and the regulator commissioned me to do a calculation on spinning reserve, I came out with 3 billion per month on spinning reserve. When you spread it, you see a very huge impact on consumers' tariff. Now, when you run cost-benefit analysis, you will see that it is not gainful. employing spinning reserve that you will not even use. Rather, the generators are paid for nothing, and then everybody is also crying at higher tariff. Various generators we studied that have the capacity to give us spinning reserve hike their capacity rate. This is what they will give, this is what they will give, and all the rest of them. And mostly this spinning reserve is mainly required as the load centers. The highest capacity individual unit we have in the country is Egbe, where you have 100 and something, I think, 220 megawatts. And the required capacity to be on spinning reserve must be able, minimum, should be 220 megawatts. So every calculation we have done did not give us economic value to begin to pay some generators spinning reserve money when we will not get that service. Spinning reserve demands that we pay you, okay, you are going to give us 60 out of your thing. Now, none of your unit machine is 60 megawatts. It could be 100 megawatts or 220 megawatts. Now we are paying you for base load of 60 megawatts, which your machine is not automated to give us. For instance, that spinning reserve means if it is automated, you should be on 60 megawatts and not above it. And when it is required, automatically it begins to be cut in. But you have 100 megawatts, and we're saying that out of the 100 megawatts, now sell 40 megawatts and leave 60 for us. Does it work? The automation does not have the capacity to say you have not exceeded 40 megawatts, or that you have not even sold your 100 megawatts. So those are the technical hitches that will not make it economically viable to begin to pay for spinning reserve. So that's why we have not actually, the regulator has not actually taken it up again to say we require spinning reserve. It's good to also correct one impression when somebody said at this platform we said privatization is a mistake. I don't think anybody said so here. It's not a mistake. There could be flaws in the process of carrying out the privatization, but not a mistake. All of us accepted privatization. So, I mean, even to say it's a failure, I don't even agree. It's not a failure. There are so many things achieved. Somebody here enumerated that somebody in the village now can tell you the functions of a meter. It's achievement.
Okay.
I tell you honestly. So that's the way.
Okay. Tom, you got the next. Yeah, you can use this.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Engineer AJ. I still maintain that the privatization was a fiasco. It was a failure. They ought to have started with a pilot scheme to know the challenges. And lessons learned will help us progress further. We have to tell ourselves the truth. Like the gentleman that said that he's not happy, I said that they should shoot the people that are destroying your towers. Now, let me tell you, when there was a snap of just one conductor in Port Harcourt, 33 kV, I know how many people that were roasted. Now, if that tower you have vandalized touches the ground with 330 or 132 kV, I'm not talking of 450 volts. Do you know how many houses that will be roasted and people that will be killed? So I'm just laughing because if you are there in my shoes, you will even pray that you will see the dead, the corpse, and they should not bury them. So I am of the view that it is better for you to test it. I was almost going mentally unstable. For 3 times consecutively, a tower was destroyed within 3 weeks. There was no Christmas for me. I'm even happy to recognize the presence of my ED here because he was the one that saved the situation, Engineer Dewumi. So he's there. He's there. He said, bring anything, let me sign it so that you get that thing working. And we protected that tower. So I know what I'm saying. 4 people that was killed was not even enough. Then let me go to
Yes.
the issue of
interconnected, interconnection at unit levels.
is it interconnection?
That was, yes. Yeah.
That guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he didn't get that question.
The SCADA is being is in progress. We're working on on that particular project, and it will be delivered. I know that there is need for us to have SCADA. With SCADA, we should be able to monitor our lines. That is quite correct. So it is practically going on now, though I was of the view that the SCADA should be done regionally, then we can now interconnect later, because it's like we're taking it as a sweep. But with prayers, it will be done.
Okay.
Yes, with prayers, because we have done it 2-3 times and it failed. So this time around, we're going to get it right. So which other question?
There's the comment from Ibom.
Okay, the compensation. The compensation equipment you asked for is very important. If you look at some of our hub substations that are hub, like Ikotepele, Ugwaji, Ikeja West, these are stations where Benin City, these are stations where you have transmission lines that come together. And when they come together, at that point you experience high voltages. And TCN has done so much by providing shunt reactors to see that this particular voltage, high voltage, they are brought down to the normal operating voltages. The other way I will look at compensation is maybe at the 33 kV voltage side, where we're supposed to have good capacitor banks to boost the voltages, mostly in the north, where you have long distance lines. At the end of it, you have very low voltages. So these low voltages, you have to put capacitor banks that will prop up the voltage to the operational voltage. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Rahila?
Yeah. Well, I think I stand with Engineer AG on the fact that, when we talk about privatization, that it failed. You don't want to throw out the baby and the water. I think in the last 10 years, I've been in the sector for over 20 years. The last 10 years, I think in terms of technical knowledge, the capacity, the understanding, people holding operators themselves accountable, questions being asked, is all part of the reform process. And when we say that we talk about privatization, we need to think back at what was driving the reform process. There are two major things. One, the need to attract private investment to meet the growing demand, and then to improve on the inefficiencies along the value chain. And what are those things? One, the reduction of ATC&C we talked about earlier this morning. The issue of grid stability and reliability that we're talking about in this panel, the need for generational adequacy, and the last would be the diversification of the energy mix on the grid. So you can say that if I tick all those boxes, have we achieved them? The answer is no. But has it failed? No, because you needed to bring in private owners to be in a position to attract private capital. Now, you also need to remember that transmission is not private. It's 100% government owned. You asked about ISO is it the right time for ISO to be established? I mean, Frank said earlier that ISO should have been established like a week ago or 1 month ago. There's never a right time. But what the law says is that one key condition is that there's a high degree of privatized entities in the market. If you read the provisions of the law, one of the conditions, and if you read the market rules, one of the key provisions is that there's a degree of privatization of the market participants. And today, we have 28 generators. About 18 of them are private sector owned. We have the distribution that is also privatized, and we have two more. I think there are about 12 or 13, because license to an independent electricity distribution has been given, and you have the EBOM power as well. So NERC, in its last report, and I think it's important to read it because then you see clearly the mechanism they use to arrive at whether the market is competitive, has reached a degree of privatization that requires ISO to be established, and whether competition can set in. And they are recommending that the minister declares for the ISO to be established. So I think my answer to you really is that TCN is not privatized. TCN is 100% owned. And from what Engineer Eze was submitting earlier, there's a problem there. There's a lack of sincerity. There's a lack of transparency. There's no accountability. Now, that is what the ISO brings to the table, because it will be held accountable. It has to run its operations in a non-discriminatory manner and in a transparent one as well. That you don't have today. The ISO will bring that to the table. And with ISO coming to play as a non-biased party, you will, and does what it needs to do to ensure that the consumption and the demand and supply meets, to balance the network, to ensure that TSP is carrying out the investments or building the lines that are required to meet demand downstream. More players will come to the market. We need to get to a level where we are pushing for bilateral contracting, where you can hold people accountable for their contracts. As an ISO, I'm sure you're aware of the service level agreements. So there's a penalty for not delivering service. That is what the ISO brings to the table. So I think to keep it short is, we have privatized. TCN is 100% owned by government. It's time to bring in private mentality and the way of working. And I believe that ISO is that platform. AJ talked about earlier about, the revenue issue, that, investors are coming and they're not interested because when they see the level of losses and all that, yes. But I think today, when you know that the Act has empowered you to be able to bring private sector and it protects you, there needs to be an interest to see that it works. I'm not seeing enough of that on that end, maybe because it's government owned. But you need to say to yourself, you know what? I need to sit with all the parties and see how this works. There's a lot of mismatch when you look at the transmission and distribution network. And that's what's leading to stranded capacity. There's a need to have a conversation around transmission planning that recognizes load downstream. We have not planned that way. I mean, we did a recent study where you had at the 33 kV line that, the capacity there was, in a particular disco, 924 megawatts. They had the capacity, but TCN couldn't deliver. And another disco, it was the other way around. Today, there's only one disco that is taking 100% of the power needs. And sometimes it's a commercial decision, because TCN is sending power to places that I have high losses. I have not, put in the required investment to drive down the losses. So I believe that with an ISO in the mix, some of these things we can begin to correct it. It won't happen overnight. We need to be patient, but also hold people accountable to what they have been called to do. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
System collapse.
Okay, there was one more. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, somebody
Okay,
talked
go
about system collapse. Somebody said cannot have a system that will tell us when system will collapse, maybe by tomorrow. And I will say it is not possible. It is very, very important that we understand what causes system collapse. Consumption should be simultaneous with generation. And once that equilibrium is disturbed, either by frequency floating or some other thing within the network, there's likely to be system disturbance. System disturbance can lead to system failure. Now, let me specifically say this. If I said here that the transmission system can carry 8,100 tested, Now, if 8,100 is not fed into the system, will it carry virtual load? No. If 8,100 is not demanded by the distribution company, what will now go to transmission? So what exactly the transmission company carries at any time T is exactly what the distribution company demands at that point, and that is the equilibrium. And at that equilibrium, you are having the frequency kept at the nominal number. But at any time there's a load drop, either deliberately or accidentally, or through what we call today load management, now the frequency will swing. And if it is not recaptured immediately, we're talking about in seconds, now there will be a swing, and this swing will lead to other drops dropping. And then there could be system disturbance leading to a system failure. This thing is not magic wand that if you have automated system, it will tell you that a disco will drop load tomorrow, or that there's a tree that is going to fall, or what Dr. that yes, criminals are going to hack down the transmission line, and then there will be something like that. So now it's also important to say that when a disco drops load, is somebody sabotaging me or what?
I am. I am.
Okay. It's causing system disturbance. Let me leave it at that.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Right, I'm just conscious of time. We're coming up to 2 hours. It's a few minutes shy. Is there anybody that has a must-ask question? A must-ask? Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. I didn't see his hand last. No, yeah, there. Are you angry?
Thank you. No, I'm not. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to really ask a must question that I need the panelists to come up with a solution. My name is Engineer Shewa Abaliu, General Manager Engineering, TCN. My question is, in the course of discussion from yesterday, there is commercialization and privatization being hinted by the Honorable Minister yesterday. I realize that in the panel, some are saying privatization is a success, another one is saying privatization is not a success. So what is the concession about the panel on the years past, 10 years ago, for privatization? Second question to the panelists is that there are 3 Ds that need to be addressed in transmission business: digitization, decentralization, and decarbonization. I noticed throughout, I'm keenly waiting to hear, because in the team, there is opportunities and prospects. And these 3 Ds should be part of the opportunities and prospect of the new, for the next 10 years to come. It has not been discussed. I would like the panel to really descend on what is the way out on these 3 Ds. Third question, which is a must. My brother, Engineer Engineer Tom Enugonum, mentioned about vandalization. Vandalization is a serious business. We wanted to hear solution. He even came out with towers that show the pattern of this vandalization. Can the panelists actually come up with out-of-the-box solution on how to avoid vandalization? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you very much. Imamuddin Talba is the name, please. First, I would like to comment on the second question of the last speaker, the 3 Ds he made mention about digitalization, decentralization, and decarbonization. He said. These are issues within the side and the competence of the TCN to handle when we come to the integrated resource plan. Then you have to make your presentation how it is going to be captured, which I believe by next year we must have our national integrated resource plan. We should not fail the world. We've committed ourselves. Mr. Moderator, I would like to say that last year when the NNPC was incorporated, we are all clapping and saying that NNPC has come on board as independent and is now performing very well. TCN was incorporated in 2006, almost 12 or 13 years before the NNPC. But TCN has not been performing. Why? Because TCN has not been given the autonomy to perform as a commercial entity. And all that we have been talking here, what you are talking about the TCN, where the failure of the success, TCN cannot achieve its objectives unless proper corporatization and commercialization of TCN is done. Proper structures has to be established. We need to give the TCN its autonomy. It is incorporated, it is a registered company, it is a profit-making organization, so it should be allowed to exist that way. Again, the issue of non-reflective use of transmission system that you talk about, you cannot have it. One, because there are a lot of requirements that you need to submit to the regulator before that is given to you. That is one. And you are not in control of that. You are supposed to submit your business investment plan for next 5 years to be approved by the regulator before those issues are considered. But you can submit it today. By the time you submit your budget for 2024, you find the National Assembly has added about 50 billion projects that have not been captured in the business plan. And that will not be reflected in their use of transmission, use of network fees. So this is some of the issues that is holding TCN from performing, and they cannot do that. That is one thing, unless if they are allowed to function as an autonomous and profit-making entity. That is one. Secondly, the issue of superhighway grid. I think it was 2017, 16 or 2017, Pashola made mention of superhighway of 740 capacity. Now the issue is, if you are talking about superhighway, which power are you going to evacuate? Why is the power that you want to evacuate? You are just managing 330, you could not get anywhere. Even at that, you cannot evacuate most of the generation that you have on ground. And you are trying to upgrade and even extend those 330 to cover the country. Now you are talking about superhighway. I would rather use that money, because I saw that the government has gotten money from China for superhighway. We should forget about superhighway, should not go beyond 330, as suggested by my good brother there. That is the capacity we want. Because I don't see a situation, because even by the Electricity Act, you find that we'll get different generation being kind of coming up in different parts of the countries. Now the states are going to go about doing embedded generation. They do not need to use the grid now. They can get the capacity and the resources within their state and generate and serve their states. So I think this is something that we need to look at. And finally, we talk about the tariff. The tariff, yes, bilateral is good. And Chairman, thank you for talking about the national security, energy security. It's good that we talk about bilateral. We give out power to other countries. While we're here, we do not have much, but we're giving out. But that notwithstanding, it's a business. In 2009, we made a it's 17, it was, sorry, 16. That was what brought about the eligible customers. Because Manufacturer Association of Nigeria at that time requested that they would like to have their power. So we had a meeting with Fashola at that time. And our suggestion that time was that, okay, let's allow all the generation to generate, give 40% to the national grid, and then 70% they can sell to any willing buyer. That would have been, that is okay. But with this Electricity Act now, I think the states should be thinking about addressing their residential customers' needs. Maybe power from the grid, which will be, to some extent, will be, kind of expensive. The industries can handle that. But this is something that I think we should consider at a later time when we're discussing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a very, very apt and wise comment. I would say that the commentary on verdict on privatization, we will never get a landing on it. Right? It's different views for different folk. But let me say that if we didn't privatize, would we be here today? Given all of the challenges that are facing the government and its purse, we may not have gotten to where we needed to go, that is clear, but we see a pathway towards getting private capital into the space, bearing in mind the ultimate objective for all of this is that we increase energy access. So I would say we're going through the pains of growth. We are not at a destination, but with corrective actions and evolution, I think we will get to where we're going. But that's my personal view. There is the interesting comment on digitization, decentralization, and decarbonization. As a matter of fact, in the space we're in today, if you're not talking decarbonization, you are not likely to attract big capital. So it is key to what we're doing. I think in the last 3 years, there is a lot of awareness in federal government agencies about the need at least to decarbonize and also the need to take advantage of digitization. Hence, all of these things around SCADA, right? A lot of effort is going into resuscitating SCADA and extending it. And there's a lot more that can be done that can come from private capital. I'm aware that there are people, this is within Enugu Disco, that have done some things in the distribution network using Internet of Things meters to detect theft and intervene. Yeah, there was also the guy from TCN that was talking about porting smart technology into controlling. So these are things that can be done and rightfully should be done. The issue of taking on renewable energy from states or big solar plants onto the grid. We're all aware that in 2016, the federal government signed power purchase agreements with 14 solar IPPs for 1.4 gigawatts total of solar power. Up till today, not one of those 14 has reached final investment decision. No, that's not done. For all sorts of reasons. How could we say we are serious about decarbonizing our network if it takes us this long to put any megawatt on the grid? We have many grids that are struggling for commercial viability, built with grant money, and once the grant money dries up, there are challenges. So more needs to be done. But also we need to think about it in holistic terms. I think Engineer Tom will tell you, almost for every megawatt that you put on the grid, you have to find solar megawatt that you put on the grid or renewable energy, because they're called variable renewable energy for a reason. They are there sometimes, and other times they're not there. If you don't have the traditional generation to back up the variability, your system will be collapsing every hour. Engineer Jama, right? So it's significant investment that needs to go on the grid, and we need to take these seriously. I think in the last contribution from Mr. Talbot, there is a serious point that we need to take on about the continued corporate existence of TCN as it currently is. Attitude, and I don't mean offense to anybody, but attitude to work needs to change. Attitude to budgeting needs to change. And TCN, at the moment, perhaps amongst my colleagues here on the panel, there is a sense that TCN is the supreme partner in the value chain. I beg to differ. It's only one cog in the wheel. The DISCO is there, the GENCO is there. When the solar IPPs come up, they're also there. People have got to work together as colleagues to get to the point where we're going. But again, this is my personal view with my biases. The issue of sustainable and steady power supply to Nigeria that has all of the citizens of Nigeria with access is one that will live with us for a long time. And the real measure of success is that with every year, we are removing one problem and there are more people that are getting connected. TCN is a key part of that. I would like to thank my panelists. We don't have time now for final comments, except there is somebody with a dying need for a final comment. We have time? Which we have covered. Which one? What is your answer to vandalization? You've covered it. That's why I don't want to go back to it. Yeah. Privatization of TCN. Why is it not no-go area? Okay. Privatization of TCN, there's a view. So can you make that very quick?
Hello? Yeah. My view about that is that if you want to privatize TCN, then you are going to look for trouble, because some areas where you as a private man takes over, you may not get anything as return on investment. It is only the federal government that sees the need to push this grid to every nook and cranny of the nation. So it is not that you can't, but for now, that's why I said it can be decentralized into zones. And still we have the TCN as a federal government still running it, but let it go into zones, from there to states. Because there are places you can put a substation of about 4-5 billion naira that you will not get 100,000 naira as return on investment. So it's not something you have to talk about until we are ripe for it. Then for the distribution people, bypassing their meters, I think the regulator or the government should come up with a law that when you bypass your meter, you will go to jail. If there is a law like that, then it should be enforced, because some people that own houses now end up paying money that tenants have already used and left. So equally in that vein, those that have houses should put a clause in the agreement that if you bypass your meter, anywhere you are in the country, even when you leave my house, they will come and pick you. So the person should go to jail. And I think that is what will solve this issue. One of our colleagues made mention in the morning, the use of information technology, like you rightly said. That has to be looked into. These are technologies we have to. In the UK, there you only take a dongle and plug into your meter, and the moment it accesses your password, and you have your power. So we should be able to do something like that. Sit down. This is a country that I used to know that are very intelligent people, but nowadays we don't read. We don't even want to read. That's the problem.
Right, we'll take that as the last word. Let me thank my colleagues on the panel, starting from Engineer Tom with his really exciting keynote address that exposed many of the areas, contributions from Engineer Jeff, from Rahila, and from Roland. I'd also like to thank all of you that have stayed, forsook your lunch, and stayed to listen to us and being very participative in all of this. Finally, my word of thanks to the organizers for giving us the opportunity to expose our thinking, share them with you, and also listen to yourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, man. A round of applause for them again. Honestly, it has been awesome, and I would like to beg our indulgence. We are very, very, very sorry. We are having to have our time to this minute. Yes. But then again, before we go for, I won't even call it lunch, just refreshing ourselves. We will have, just like we arranged in the morning for the tea break, the panelists and some of the people here can have their refreshment on this side, while others will just go down. And then secondly, I'll put to our reminder that tomorrow's session will commence by 9:30. Honestly, if we put in time in doing what we have to do, we'll be able to finish on a good time. The presentations that have been done, all the panel discussions, we're going to compile them and put them in a slide and then send it to your email. At the end of the day, you have every discussion that we have here into your email. Then again, I want to entice us over something. I hope we're listening. Sorry, please. We have a gala night tomorrow, and they say, walk without play, make Patricia a dull girl. So please, we'll all avail ourselves in tomorrow's session, which is we have 3. We'll take a short break tomorrow, and then we'll come back for the gala night. I hope to see every one of us. I still have some missing items here. 2, I think it should be 2 glass cases with the glasses in it, and one earpiece. So we'll go for a refreshment, not lunch. Sorry for all the inconveniences, but I see patient people, and I wish us a good evening. Thank you all.